They tore through her duffel bag like it was trash. A toothbrush, a notebook, half a pack of gum. Private Colin Hayes let out a snort. She packin' for Girl Scout camp. Corporal Jamie Price didn't laugh. He just narrowed his eyes, watching the woman across the inspection table. She hadn't said a word since stepping across the red access line, silent, steady, unreadable. No uniform, no base insignia. Just an old canvas field jacket zipped to the collar and boots, too clean to be casual, but too worn to be brand new. She didn't look lost. She looked like she belonged, and that made them nervous. They'd spotted her from a distance, just after sunrise, moving across the wind-blown southern edge of Fort Laramie's perimeter. The morning sky was streaked with the last traces of aircraft fuel, and the floodlights still buzzed with the hangover of night duty. Most civilians paused at the red line, confused or intimidated. She didn't. She walked right up and stopped like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "Mom," Hayes said, stepping forward, trying to mask the unease in his voice. "I need to see your ID." She didn't speak, just reached into her jacket and handed over a flat, worn badge, no branch, no rank, just a barcode, a faded photo, and a name, Anna Whitlock. Price tilted his head. "That ain't a military ID. It ain't civilian either," Hayes muttered, tapping it against the scanner. The light blinked yellow, not green, not red. "Just hold." "She's not on the manifest," Price confirmed, scrolling through his tablet. Anna didn't blink. Her face stayed exactly the same, calm, centered, almost indifferent. "Mem." Hayes tried again. "What's your business here?" Still nothing. No protest. No defiance. Just a stillness that made the back of Price's neck itch. "Secondary inspection," Price finally said, signaling to the MPs nearby. Anna didn't resist. She moved with a quiet fluidity, unshouldered her bag, and placed it on the steel inspection table like she was setting down a tray in a church. The zipper slid open under Hayes' hand, and he started laying the contents out: folded socks, a pen, a charger cord, a worn field cap, gloves. All arranged with such mechanical neatness it was unsettling. Then came the sound, a soft clink. Hayes paused. He reached in and pulled out a small leather case, dark, cracked with age, wrapped with a suede tie. It looked handmade, personal, old. "What's this?" he asked. Anna said nothing. Hayes opened the flap. Inside sat a silver emblem. Not polished, not decorative, worn at the edges, darkened in the creases. 3 stars, a triangular crest, no motto, no known division. Just 4 letters and 2 numbers etched so faintly they looked erased. VR 73. The table went silent. Price inhaled sharply. One of the MPs stopped walking. The other tapped his comm and froze. Hayes stood stiff, holding the case like it was radioactive. He'd never seen that emblem before, not in training, not in protocol. But something in his bones told him this was not something to question, not something to joke about, not something to touch unless you were cleared 5 levels above God. Anna reached forward, calm as ever, and took the case from his trembling fingers. Slid it back into her bag like it was just another sock. No orders were given. But the gate light turned green. The logistics officer waiting behind her stepped back. The major watching from the side of the path straightened his spine, silently. Anna zipped her bag, hoisted it over her shoulder, and walked through the checkpoint without a single word. But nothing at that gate would ever be the same again. The air shifted. The wind changed. And somewhere in the silence, every soldier there understood that wasn't just a visitor. That was a ghost. One they weren't supposed to see again. Not now. Not ever. Anna Whitlock didn't need anyone's permission. The gate light blinked green, and without a glance backward, she stepped forward, boots hitting concrete like punctuation marks in a sentence that no one dared speak. No rank, no clearance, no orders, yet somehow every man standing within 20 feet of that inspection point knew she belonged. The air changed the moment she crossed the threshold. Not colder, not warmer, just heavier, like the weight of something long buried had shifted. Behind her, Private Hayes stood frozen, still holding the inspection scanner. His mouth was open slightly, but no words came. Corporal Price's fingers hovered near his sidearm, not in threat, but in instinctive awe. Neither of them had been briefed on what to do if someone presented that emblem, because no one had expected it would ever resurface. It was supposed to be gone, decommissioned, buried in a vault, along with all memory of the people who once wore it. And yet there it was, in her bag, like it had never left. From the far end of the security corridor, a major in pressed blues had watched the entire exchange. He hadn't stepped in, not once. But now he did something curious. He straightened to full height, unfolded his arms, and slowly brought one hand to his chest, fingers brushing the edge of his collar. It wasn't a salute. Not quite. It was recognition. The kind only certain men gave to certain ghosts. Anna didn't acknowledge him. She didn't have to. The interior of Fort Laramie spread before her like a half-forgotten map she could still trace by memory. Maintenance trucks rolled by. Forklifts beeped near fuel tanks. Yellow chevrons painted the roads. But to her, nothing had changed. She walked with a precision that wasn't stiff but anchored, as if every step was placed with deliberate silence, tuned to a rhythm she no longer needed to hear out loud. She passed a pair of young cadets in bright vests. One turned, about to call out, then paused, as if something unseen clutched the words in his throat. They knew she wasn't supposed to be there. But none of them dared stop her. Corporal Price, now at the gate's interior booth, watched her retreating figure for a long time. He pulled up the access manifest again, fingers scrolling, searching for anything, any department, contractor, audit code, that could explain her entry. Nothing. She wasn't on the list. Not for today. Not for this decade. He toggled over to command queries, his heart ticking hard in his chest. Still nothing. No records, no scheduled visitors matching her ID badge. It wasn't even flagged as expired, because it wasn't in the system at all. And that's when the full weight of what just happened began to settle into his bones. They hadn't let her in. They had stepped aside. Inside the base, Anna continued through the maze of steel and shadow. The emblem hadn't been displayed, only seen. Just once. But that was enough. She didn't need to speak. Her silence was the message. And the message was clear. Someone just walked back into Fort Laramie who was never supposed to return. Word spread fast, as it always does on military ground. By the time Anna passed the logistics yard, the whispers were already circling. Did you see what they found in her bag? 3 stars. Triangular crest. No motto, just a code. My uncle served Black Recon. He told me they used to carry stuff like that. But it's all gone now, isn't it? Everyone asked. No one answered. In the distance, near the operations tower, a senior officer stepped into the morning air. He squinted toward the lower gate and felt something shift in his gut. A presence. A ripple. He didn't see Anna directly, but he felt her, like a front moving in. Not a threat, not a storm. Something else, something older. He pulled his radio from his belt but didn't speak. What would he say? Something just entered the base that doesn't appear on our rosters. That would only raise alarms he didn't want to explain. He let the radio drop back, let it be. And so Anna kept walking, through the corridors of concrete and history. She didn't hurry, didn't break stride. Her bag was still slung neatly over her shoulder, its weight balanced like she'd carried it across continents, which she probably had. To most, she was just a woman walking alone. To those who had seen the emblem, those who recognized its shape, the silence it carried like a loaded chamber, it was clear. She was not a visitor. She was a classified memory brought to life. And whatever she had come for was already in motion. The base had seen tens of thousands of footsteps, but none like hers, not in years. Anna Whitlock moved through Fort Laramie not like a visitor, not like a civilian, but like someone walking back into her own memory. She passed convoy lines, training yards, and humming power grids without glancing twice. Every sharp turn, every blind corner, every maintenance shed was where it always had been. She didn't need a map. The map was under her skin, and though no one recognized her face, every man and woman who saw her felt it. That pressure in the air, that stillness before something shifts. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even respect. It was gravity. She didn't speak, didn't ask directions. She didn't have to. Wherever she was going, it wasn't by chance. And the further she walked, the quieter the base seemed to get, like even the concrete remembered her weight. Hangar 4 stood at the far end of the field, just beyond the old fuel towers, its massive doors yawning open like the mouth of something asleep. Inside, the clatter of tools echoed against steel beams. A C-17 transport aircraft lay half, dismantled under the glare of floodlights, its fuselage peeled open for inspection like some wounded creature. Technicians in stained coveralls shouted torque specs, air compressors hissed, and rivet guns snapped in fast bursts. It was the kind of chaos only mechanics understood, loud, gritty, rhythmic. But it all stopped when she entered. Not instantly, just gradually, like a wave of quiet catching up with itself. One wrench slipped from a tech's hand and clattered across the grated floor. Another paused mid-step on a scaffold. A socket rolled until it tapped her boot. She bent to pick it up, offering it back, handle first. The man took it without a word, eyes glued to the subtle bulge beneath her jacket, where that emblem rested again, unseen but never unfelt. She took 3 steps forward, boots clicking on steel. A dozen eyes followed. Then a voice rose, gruff, clipped. "Mom, you can't be in here without clearance." The crew chief, name stitched on his pocket, Mirin, stepped into her path. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't shout. But his stance said authority, and the men behind him straightened as if bracing for confrontation. Anna stopped, raised her chin slightly, and for the first time since entering the base, she spoke. "I'm looking for Commander Hanley." The name dropped like a stone in a still pond. Half the crew froze. Marin blinked. The command office above, housed in a glass mezzanine, flared to life as a junior tech turned and sprinted toward it. Seconds later, a figure appeared behind the glass. Broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, carrying the weight of too many budget meetings and not enough hours of sleep. Commander Michael Hanley. He took the stairs 2 at a time. She didn't move. Neither did anyone else. When he reached the hangar floor and saw her, truly saw her, he stopped short mid-step. Recognition bloomed, and with it, something else: calculation. He didn't salute. Didn't ask questions. Just nodded once. "Follow me." She did. They crossed the catwalk in silence, the sound of her boots echoing beside his, cutting through the frozen tension left behind. Past storage cages labeled avionics classified, through a thermal-sealed door into a small operations annex that smelled of ozone and old coffee. At the end of the hall, a secure room, frosted glass key-coated. He opened it. She entered. Inside, he shut the door, flipped the privacy switch. The hum of the base dulled to a low throb behind insulated walls. A conference table stood in the center, flight schedules scattered across it like forgotten paperwork. "I never thought I'd see that emblem again," Hanley said. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. Anna set her bag down, unzipped it, pulled out the old leather case and laid it on the table. She opened it. The silver emblem lay inside, dark and worn, but unmistakable. He exhaled. "Where did you pull my file?" she asked. His jaw worked slightly, then he leaned back and rubbed a hand across his face. 6-layer encryption. Cold storage. "Your status was listed as deceased." She said nothing. He continued. 2 weeks ago, a flag tripped in the Joint Security Archive. An asset tagged for potential reactivation. I wasn't briefed. No names. Just a civilian auditor flagged for limited access. He tapped the emblem. "Now I know why." She closed the case. "I'm not here for an audit." And just like that, the room turned colder. Whatever she'd come for, it wasn't routine. And it sure as hell wasn't over. Hanley didn't sit right away. He stood there for a long moment, eyes fixed on the old leather case she'd placed on the table between them. The emblem inside, 3 silver stars on a triangular black crest, seemed to darken under the fluorescence, as if the very air around it carried static. No words were spoken, but the silence was loud with history. He finally pulled the chair back and sank into it, leaning forward, arms braced against the edge of the table like a man trying to keep a door from opening. "You were with Night Eagle," he said, voice low, dry. It wasn't a question. It was the first piece of truth that had been spoken in that room in over a decade. "I wasn't just with it," Anna replied. "I was the final override." Hanley let out a slow breath and stared at the ceiling, as if searching for something that had long since slipped away. Project Night Eagle wasn't a name you said out loud, not unless you wanted trouble. It had been the most classified weapons program of its time, a stealth UAV platform built for first strike precision in contested zones, capable of autonomous operation at hypersonic speeds. No pilot, no signature, no accountability. But there had been a catch. A single human safeguard buried in the system's architecture. The platform could not go lethal without a live authorization, a biometric code tethered to a certified combat operator. Only 3 existed. 2 had died in incidents no one could discuss. The third was presumed KIA after Copenhagen. And yet here she was. I read the obit, Hanley murmured. Classified. Said you burned up on re-entry. No remains. Anna gave a thin shrug. That was convenient for everyone. And now. She reached into her bag and pulled out a black drive, sliding it across the table without flourish. This came in 36 hours ago. Low power burst, tight band frequency, strata scatter encryption, came out of nowhere. Hanley plugged it into the terminal beside him. Data bloomed on the screen. Cipher strings, coordinate fragments, one header line blink of VR73 AUHPNG. He stared at it, color draining from his face. This is the activation handshake, he said. Someone reawakened the beacon. Exactly, she said. And it pinned from inside 70 kilometers. You still storing the command module here? Hanley rubbed his eyes, already knowing the answer before he spoke. Vault 6. It was sealed after shutdown. Nobody's touched it in 10 years. They have now, she said. And if they've got the beacon, they're already building toward the platform. They're missing only one thing. The module, and the only person left who can unlock it is sitting in your office. For a moment, he didn't speak. The weight of what she said pressed down on the room like a lid slowly tightening. Where's the platform? He finally asked. I've tracked irregular cargo moving west by rail, she said. Classified as decommissioned avionics, disguised in scrap manifests. The rail ends 40 miles out, near a Cold War-era storage silo deactivated in 97. I think they're reconstructing Night Eagle. I thought we dismantled it completely. Hanley muttered. We tried, she said. But nothing stays buried forever, does it? Hanley stood up again, moving to the wall panel, pulling up a live logistics map. Convoys, patrol paths, personnel shifts. He was still sharp, still connected, but something in his posture had changed, like he knew the truth before the screens told him. Why now? He asked. Why would someone go through this much trouble after all these years? Anna's voice was steady. Because war changed. Deniability is currency now, and a ghost platform like Night Eagle is the ultimate black asset. Fast, invisible, uncontrollable once launched. You think this is just about a prototype? She leaned forward slightly. This is about rewriting the rules. Hanley looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear, not of the enemy, but of himself, of what he might have to authorize. You think they'll hit the vault? She answered without hesitation. No, I think they're already inside it. Before he could move, the internal alarm began to sound, one long, piercing tone that didn't echo so much as vibrate straight through the concrete walls. Hanley's console lit up. Unauthorized breach, South Service entrance. 3 trucks, no markings, no radio, moving fast. Security detail is 2 minutes behind, he said. They won't make it, Anna replied, grabbing her bag. How the hell do you know that? Because if I were on the other side of this, I wouldn't be stopping either. Hanley opened a locked drawer and pulled out a sidearm. Tossed it across the table. She caught it in one hand, racked it clean. You sure about this? He asked. No, she said, sliding the weapon into her hip holster. But someone activated the past. I'm just here to make sure it doesn't rewrite the future. She turned for the door. Hanley was already keying open the blast shutters. Alarms raged. The base lit up, and the only person who still remembered how to fly the one aircraft that was never supposed to be rebuilt walked straight into the storm, like it had been waiting for her all along. The base had slipped into chaos by the time Anna stepped out of the ops annex. Sirens screamed across the compound, echoing through steel corridors and over the rooftops of long-forgotten hangars. Armed guards scrambled toward the South Service entrance, rifles drawn, commands shouted over radios already crackling with conflicting orders. Dust blew across the access roads like smoke before a storm, and through that storm, 3 trucks came barreling through the southern perimeter. Unmarked, reinforced, moving with too much precision to be anything but mercenary. Anna didn't run. She moved with intent, cutting across the lower catwalk, her bag slung tight to her side, her boots landing heavy on steel grates that rang with urgency. She reached the end of the railing and didn't hesitate. vaulting 10 feet down to a fuel platform, landing low and balanced. The MPs were still gathering, too slow. The intruders were already halfway to Vault 6. She needed wheels. Beyond the fuel yard, a line of Humvees sat parked for training rotation, keys in full tanks, forgotten in the scramble. She reached the nearest, slid behind the wheel, and hot-wired the ignition in under 15 seconds. The engine caught with a low growl. She didn't wait for clearance. The gate ahead hadn't even opened when she floored it, slamming through the chain, link with the sound of tearing metal and scattering sparks. The trucks were fast, but they weren't expecting company. Anna gunned the engine, dust kicking up in thick trails behind her. The first truck swerved around a security checkpoint, smashing a bollard and bouncing over a drainage ditch. It was ahead by 70 yards and closing on the bunker. She tapped her brakes, flicked left, and cut across the inner ring road to intercept from the side. Her hands never hesitated. This wasn't a pursuit. It was a recovery mission, one she'd rehearsed in her head for 10 years. The bag on the passenger seat tumbled as she hit a hard right, revealing what she'd prepped before entering the base, a collapsed rifle frame, compact, matte black, built for one purpose. She reached for it without taking her eyes off the lead truck, snapping pieces into place with mechanical precision. Barrel, scope, grip, then the chamber, loaded with EMP micro rounds. She skidded to a halt behind a service berm, jumped out, and dropped to the ground, crawling up the gravel slope with the rifle pressed to her chest. Her breath was steady, vision narrow. No panic, just the hum of instinct returning like a floodlight into a dark room. The first shot cracked, clean, silent, surgical. The rear engine block of the middle truck sparked, then sizzled. Blue light arced from the undercarriage, and the vehicle rolled to a dead stop. The driver leapt out, weapon raised, but before he could find his target, her second round struck his rifle's power housing. It went dead in his hands. The third truck kept moving, fast and desperate. 2 men on the flap had opened fire. The bullets struck high, tracing over the berm as she rolled sideways and fired again. One round clipped a rear tire. The truck fishtailed. Another round struck the digital scope of the second gunner. His weapon blinked out, useless. She moved with ghost-like rhythm, up, fire, relocate, her silhouette barely visible against the berm. 2 mercenaries dropped their rifles and ran. One froze. The others hesitated. She never gave them a second shot. Only one truck remained, hurtling toward the access ramp of Vault 6. Anna didn't hesitate. She bolted back to the Humvee, still idling, threw it into gear and gave chase. The truck driver saw her coming, tried to veer, tried to block, but she leaned out the window at 50 miles per hour, drew her sidearm, and fired 2 clean shots into the rear axle. The tire blew, shredded rubber snapping free, and the vehicle veered left hard, smashing into a stack of decommissioned crates near the vault wall. She braked hard, climbed out, and advanced on foot, weapon raised, eyes locked. The driver stumbled out, coughing, lifting a sidearm with a trembling hand. She fired once. The round struck his shoulder plate and knocked him flat. He reached for something on his belt, small, square, black. A detonator. She didn't wait. Second shot lower. The device skittered from his fingers. She moved fast, kicked it away, yanked a zip tie from her pocket, and cuffed his wrists before he could blink. Guards arrived seconds later. MPs, medics, support crew, voices shouted, orders collided. But Anna stood still amid it all, her weapon lowered, her mission complete. In the bed of the wrecked truck sat a black containment crate, sealed, unopened. The last module of Night Eagle, still intact. Later, in a reinforced hangar surrounded by more armed personnel than the base had seen in years, Hanley opened the crate. Inside lay the flight control ring, iridium bonded, unmarked, shaped like a question no one wanted to answer. Anna stepped forward and laid her emblem beside it. The green light blinked. Match confirmed. No one spoke. No one had to. The ghost was back, and she had just taken the sky away from those who thought she'd been forgotten. The base had gone quiet again. But it wasn't the peace of safety. It was the hush that follows something irreversible. The wreckage from the assault had been cleared. The captured control module now locked under triple seal security, and yet no one dared believe it was over. Not really. Fort Laramie's lights still burned through the night, but the faces walking its corridors had changed, Sharper, quieter, glancing a little too long at doors once considered forgotten. Inside Hangar 12, beyond a blast door no one had opened in over a decade, the air smelled of dust, oil, and something colder, like memory. Anna stood alone in the cavernous space, her boots echoing off the reinforced concrete floor. Floodlights snapped on one by one, illuminating the shape that dominated the room. Sleek, matte, deadly quiet, the Night Eagle. The aircraft looked less like it had been stored and more like it had been waiting. Its black surface drank the light, revealing no insignia, no registration. Even its tail number had been scrubbed. But Anna didn't need markings. She knew every curve, every intake, every trick of its composite skin. She walked a slow circle around it, trailing a gloved hand along its port side. Her fingers paused beneath the forward hatch, where a hidden access panel was recessed into the airframe. She tapped it 3 times, then once more. The panel hissed open. There had been no order, no briefing, no approval. She didn't ask, because some missions were too dangerous to be assigned by committee. Some weapons weren't designed to be retrieved, but to be remembered by exactly one person when everything else failed. She climbed the access ladder with silent precision, each rung a rung back into the past. Inside the cockpit, everything was exactly where it should be. The control seat sat low and tight, molded for her frame. She lowered herself into it without hesitation, as if she'd never left. The HUD blinked to life in a cool amber glow, vintage software mixed with lines of code she'd written herself. A strange hybrid of sanctioned architecture and her own forbidden modifications. She pulled a small metal object from her coat pocket. The emblem, 3 stars. Black triangle, she slid it into a shallow slot on the flight stick. Biometric match confirmed. Flight Authority WRAH. The voice came through the console, a soft, synthetic female tone with the faintest warble of something older than any current system. Anna let a small smile cross her lips. That name hadn't been spoken in 10 years. It had been purged from operations records, erased from deployment logs, overwritten in the digital graveyard where dangerous things went to disappear. But it remembered her. Wraith. She exhaled slowly, hands hovering over the controls. The aircraft was still cold, its power reserves minimal, its engine cores dormant. But it was alive. Her fingers moved with reverence, priming fuel lines, balancing hydraulic feeds, initiating silent diagnostics. One by one, green lights lit up on the side panel. Outside, no alarms sounded. No perimeter cameras registered movement. She had programmed that herself before the command team even realized what she might do. The Night Eagle's existence had been invisible once. Now it was invisible again, but by her own hand. In the ops tower, Commander Hanley stared at a secondary terminal, a screen not tied to official systems. Only 2 people had access. One was buried in Arlington. The other was in Hangar 12. He saw the heat signature rise, the power draw shift. One small diagnostic ping blinked across the screen. Green verified. She hadn't requested clearance. She'd granted it to herself. He didn't stop her. At exactly 3:58 hours, the hangar doors parted in silence. No crews moved. No chatter buzzed on the comms. Just the soft, growing whine of turbine ignition as the Night Eagle rolled forward under her hand, its engines whispering like a breath in the dark. There was no co-pilot, no crew chief, no flight deck chatter. There was only Wraith, back in the cockpit of a plane that was never meant to fly again. And tonight no one would know she was gone. Not yet. But when the skies turned again, they would. The Night Eagle rolled down the tarmac like a shadow given form. No flashing beacons, no runway lights, no radio chatter announcing departure. The only guideposts were infrared markers buried deep along the taxi lines, glowing faintly in wavelengths the human eye couldn't detect. In the cockpit, Anna Wraith watched the gauges flicker to life, every system aligning like muscle memory rebuilt in steel. Her hands moved over the controls without hesitation, every switch, every dial exactly where it had been 10 years ago. Nothing about this flight was sanctioned. There was no mission code, no satellite uplink, no confirmation from a command center. And yet it was happening, because someone had to make it happen. She reached altitude in under 5 minutes, staying low at first, hugging the terrain across the flatlands, skimming just above the ridgelines to avoid early detection. The flight path she followed didn't exist on any modern chart. She had built it herself, years ago, when Night Eagle was still a prototype and the risks of real deployment were just theoretical. But now the math was real, and so was the target. Far ahead, beyond the Rockies and deep into airspace considered diplomatically gray, a signal moved, erratic, encrypted, too quiet to be military, too steady to be civilian. Satellite telemetry suggested it was a drone, heavily modified, moving contraband hardware across multiple borders. It wasn't supposed to be flying tonight. And if it reached its next checkpoint, it might disappear forever. Her objective wasn't to destroy it. That would have been easy. Too loud, too permanent. Her goal was exposure. She needed to track its movement, map its vector, then bounce those coordinates through a dormant satellite relay still loyal to the older systems. One that would upload directly to the Strategic Reconnaissance Archive without leaving fingerprints. No fire, no crash, just truth. She climbed sharply at the edge of Colorado airspace, engaging terrain, following autopilot for 90 seconds, just long enough to stabilize her angle and prep the descent. At 52,000 feet, she throttled back and initiated the dive. It wasn't a fall, it was a vanish. The Night Eagle's descent was controlled with surgical precision, powered just enough to hold pitch but not enough to spark heat, tracking sensors. Every system ran dark, cabin lights off. Engine heat dumped into shielded dispersal units, exterior skin absorbing the cold around her like a cloak. Anna's breath slowed. She gripped the flight stick with the same steadiness she had when she first tested the prototype. No panic, just instinct. At 19,000 feet, she spotted the target. Just a flicker on her scope, thermal barely registering, cloaked hard against the upper wind currents. She didn't intercept. She mirrored, dropped behind and below it, mimicking its arc from a distance that couldn't be seen by line of sight radar. She let it lead. 30 seconds. 45. Then, at the 70-second mark, she pulsed a single ping, encrypted brief, and aimed skyward at a satellite that hadn't spoken in 8 years. It answered, quietly, silently, like an old friend waking from a long sleep. Data transferred, position locked, proof gathered. She peeled off, banking west and away from the transport corridor. No alarms, no tracers. No one even knew she'd been there. The other aircraft continued on, unaware that it had just been stripped of its invisibility. The Night Eagle re-entered domestic airspace under full blackout. The only sound in the cockpit was the whisper of airflow and the soft, irregular thrum of her heartbeat in her helmet. She didn't key the mic, didn't request a landing sequence. By the time she reached Fort Laramie, the runway was clear, but not lit. The ground crew had been told nothing. They simply watched the dark shape emerge from the horizon, touch down without sound, and coast to a stop inside Hangar 12. No salutes, no applause, just silence. Anna stayed seated for a long moment after the final system shut down. Her hands rested on the console, eyes locked on the heads up display that now read Mitrasent Psi Gmail Int Garai Ty. She didn't smile. Didn't move. The past hadn't been erased tonight, but it had been justified. When she finally climbed down, there were no officers waiting, no journalists, no medals, just a handful of night crew standing still, their eyes fixed not on the plane but on her. They didn't speak, but they understood. Something had returned, something they couldn't name, and it had just walked back into the dark. The morning sky over Fort Laramie hadn't yet turned blue, just that muted copper haze, the kind that settles after something irreversible. The B-2 sat in silence inside Hangar 12, its carbon black skin still whispering the heat of re-entry. Its engines were cold, systems off, but the air around it still carried the tension of a presence that refused to fade. Wraith had returned. The mission was done, and the war, at least this one, had been stopped before it began. Anna stood beside the aircraft alone, no debrief, no welcome. She hadn't called for one. The hangar crew who had watched her land said nothing. A few glanced her way, but none approached. They didn't have to. Whatever had just happened between the clouds and the earth didn't belong to protocol. It belonged to legend. She walked across the tarmac slowly, her boots moving in rhythm with a memory too deep to name. Her flight suit was still sealed to the neck, unmarked, anonymous. No rank, no wings, no country. Only the faint outline of the old emblem. 3 stars in a triangle, faded against her left arm like a bruise time hadn't healed. The gate ahead was the same one they'd torn through her bag. Same line painted across the cement. Same scanners. Same red strobe above the access booth. But the soldiers manning it were not the same. Word travels fast in places like this. And though none of them had orders about her, every one of them stood a little taller now, uniforms neater, hands held closer to their sides. She didn't look at them. She didn't need to. She walked with that same quiet gravity, like someone who had long since stopped trying to prove anything to anyone. The kind of calm that isn't trained, it's earned. And just as she reached the final threshold, where the base ended and the outside world resumed, a man stepped from behind the blast wall, older, tall, civilian clothes. No rank insignia, no ID tag, but his posture carried authority, the kind that isn't given by position, but by presence. His cap rested in his left hand, pressed gently against his thigh. His right hand remained at his side, trembling slightly with age or something older than that, recognition. They locked eyes for just a second. He didn't speak. He didn't salute, not by regulation. But he brought the cap to his chest and stood straight, not as if acknowledging a superior, but honoring something that couldn't be ranked. Something that had survived when it wasn't supposed to. Anna didn't return the gesture, not because she refused it, but because she didn't need to. She understood, and so did he. In that moment, there was no war, no secret flight, no erased history. Only one silent truth between them: some warriors don't disappear because they're forgotten. They disappear because they were never meant to be seen in the first place. She stepped past him without a word. The gate opened without command, and she walked into the morning wind, stirring dust around her boots, leaving behind a base that would speak of her only in low voices and half phrases. No one would write a citation. No footage would be aired. But from that day forward, every watch officer who stood post would glance once more at the gate where she had walked out, just to be sure. The story spread not through channels, but through silences. A name never spoken, a call sign erased, and yet everyone remembered. Because some legends don't live in headlines. They live in the moments when the world almost breaks, and someone you dismissed keeps it from falling apart. Not every warrior gets a medal. Not every battle ends with a parade. Some stories don't make the headlines, and yet they're the ones we carry with us the longest. She didn't return for recognition. She didn't walk back through that gate because someone told her to. She did it because the mission still mattered, even if the world had moved on. Anna, Wraith, was erased from the records, dismissed by those who feared what they didn't understand. But when everything else failed, when no orders were left to follow, she stepped forward, not because she had to, but because she was ready when no one else was. And maybe that's the lesson. In life, you won't always be seen. You won't always be celebrated, but doing the right thing when no one's watching, that's the moment that defines you. Maybe you're not flying stealth bombers through hostile skies, but maybe you're the one holding your family together in silence. Maybe you're the one staying late to fix the things others ignored. Maybe you're the one who still shows up when no one asks and no one thanks you. That doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unforgettable. Because real strength doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a reason. If this story meant something to you, let us know in the comments. Tell us about someone in your life who reminds you of Wraith. Or maybe it's you. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, if you believe that quiet courage still matters in a loud world, subscribe to the channel. Because silence doesn't mean forgotten. And some warriors don't need a rank to be respected. They just need to be seen.